passe super l'artiste, super, encore un but sensationnel. That's a brilliant bit of follow-up play by Mahe. Oh my goodness me, what a shot.
Sagosen setter det hen! Han setter den! De i semifinale igjen!
Hello and welcome to the Uninformed Handball Hour. This is Brian Campion speaking to you from Vienna, Austria. I'm joined, of course, by Chris O'Reilly from Gothenburg, Sweden, Alex Kulesh from Copenhagen, Denmark. Hello, boys.
Hello, Brian.
Hi, Brian.
Ready for some handball chat?
Oh, born ready.
I think Alex wants to start. He has his homework done, so he's going to start with probably one of the biggest stories of the last maybe week or two of a Norwegian team looking to take over the world, basically. Huh?
Oh, but before we do that, we should talk about who our guest is later in the podcast.
Oh, yes.
Because often we're very bad at that. People who are looking at or listening to the podcast and have read the caption know who it is already, but we should still, properly introduce her. And it's Laura Agena from the Playmaker Women's Handball website and podcast. She's going to join us from Buenos Aires to talk about the Women's Champions League. Now, on to Alex and his homework.
I have done my homework, which is tough because there's so much handball going on all the time. It's a bit overwhelming, and I think it speaks volumes that we're only just catching up with the Women's Champions League this year, which is well and truly in full flow. Only getting a chance there. We haven't kind of gone into the leagues in too much detail, but we will do all of that. But to start, we really need to kind of go into probably the biggest story that's come out over the last couple of weeks in handball. And this is the new super project in handball emanating from the small Norwegian town of Trondheim, where both of you were
yes,
a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
It was a lovely town.
That's where the Uninformed Handball Hour debuted as co-production with the Euro. So that was where we started our Euro recordings back in EHF Euro 2020, just before the pandemic, where we were licking handball players and, talking to them as if they were real people in the same place as them. Yeah, good times, Brian.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely a town, that's for sure.
Is Trondheim not like the third biggest city in Norway?
I think it's probably the second or third biggest city.
No, with a population of 205,000 people as of 2020, it's the third most populous municipality in Norway. The fourth largest urban area. So there you go.
That comparatively to some of the mega clubs in handball, that is a full metropolis there. It's a huge city to work with. But basically, there is a club there called Kolstad who are in the top division in Norway. But out of nowhere, they came out with this story that they want to bring Sander Sagosen home. And that's a headline people have attached to. And it's a headline that gets you really excited. So basically, there's huge ambition in this club to make it kind of the new super club in handball. They've stated that, they're willing to expand their budget significantly with up to between 5 and 7 million euro coming from sponsors in the coming year. And a full budget potentially of up to 10 million euro, which is pretty significant. It puts them right at the top of the handball world. It's not PSG levels with their 17 million, but it's right up there. And they want to basically build, in my opinion, a replica of what has happened in Aalborg. So basically this club of Scandinavian players and a home hero. So Aalborg brought Hansen home. Kolstad want to bring Sagosen home in 2023 when his contract expires. That's a tough proposition for Sagosen, I think. He's been a little bit quiet on this. He has acknowledged the rumors, stating that his contracts talks are still ongoing, but Norway, the league there is not in the right place for him in his career. But I think it is possible. But first, a lot of things need to happen. What do you think? If you were in Sagosen's shoes, what do you think that's something that he should go for?
I mean, he did speak to our friend Merle Schach on the Kieler Nachrichten. It was behind a paywall, though, so we didn't get a full insight. He did say he was he's kind of torn about it. He doesn't really know what he's going to do yet. And looking into this and thinking about 2023, and it's at that stage, he's actually going to be turning 28. All of a sudden, Sander Sagosen is getting old. Not old, but getting into his peak handball years, which are still I guess you could argue, 30, 31, 32 seem to be where the modern male handball players are hitting their peak. But he's slowly but surely getting to that age now. And so in that regard, a 28-year-old Sander Sagosen going back to Norway is maybe not completely ridiculous, but I think he probably would want to see, or if I were Sander, I would like to see the money splashed first and my future teammates win the Norwegian League and get into the Champions League. Then I'd consider joining them. And
they have started splashing the money. So the first signing that's been officially confirmed is Smarsson, from the Icelandic player from Frischef Göppingen. A pretty good signing, I think. He's 26-year-old, has 44 caps for Iceland, 60 goals, a real solid player. And there's a lot of names rumoured with them right now. Another big one is Magnus Rühl, who is not having a good time in Flensburg. We can put that very clearly. And maybe for him, getting out of the Bundesliga might be the best option. That's a big kind of Norwegian signing. But also, Gullerud has been rumoured to be signed actually for the 2022 season. Oh. So that came from Handball Leaks, which is a very fun Instagram page which gets this information somehow, and a lot of the time is correct. So I put a lot of faith in Handball Leaks, the mystery behind that page.
I'm beginning to think Handball Leaks is just another way for Rasmus Boysen to speak to himself and just say, I have a feeling this is going to be happening. And another source, which is not me, also says it's happening. So Rasmus, we're on to you.
It's not a bad theory. Then other players, Sigvaldi Gudjonsson from Kielce. I think that makes a lot of sense. I don't think he fits into the future plans there. Karlsborg Gord from Lemgo, that would be a huge signing. I think he's a player who's destined for a big club move. Kent Tunnensen, again, makes a lot of sense. If I was him, I'd be, dying for that opportunity. He's been through a rough patch. And Bergerud, who seems to be linked with every club in European handball at the moment. He's just sitting there in the Danish countryside waiting for the right offer. So that's a team that would, make waves in handball, I think. I don't think we can assume that all of those players will be signed, but it's big, but they have to contest with Elverum for a couple of years, who are one of the hottest teams in European handball right now.
They are. Yeah, I was just going to say that. I mean, in general, for Scandinavian handball, it's super exciting because they're not alone in this, and looking backing Kolstad as this potential superpower seems to be a very wise move in that part of the country, because in Trondheim they do have the Spectrum, which is I think almost 9,000 seats for handball games. So that's there you have your Champions League arena already there for you. And you have Rema 1000, that supermarket chain, which seems to be putting the money behind it. And you can imagine why they, as big handball sponsors anyway, and sports sponsors, would love to be the name that on a team that is that is basically representing Norway at the highest level. But when you look at them and Elverum, who are improving all the time, and Aalborg, you've got a couple of teams in Sweden that, at a smaller level would like to be the Swedish superpower or Scandinavian superpower, like Kristianstad and Sävehof, who have those ambitions and potential one day to do it. So overall, it's probably a good time for Scandinavian players who are playing in the Bundesliga to start looking homewards.
You're talking about Christian O'Sullivan? First player that came to my mind there. You don't think it's a bit unusual that all this talk about Kolstad and the money that suddenly came out of nowhere, and it's around the same time that Newcastle get bought out and they're talking about starting their own Super League? If there's any conspiracy theorists listening out there, I'd say just look into it a little bit.
I would highly doubt that the team of Kolstad in Trondheim is being powered by the Saudi Arabian crown prince.
I don't know.
He might have a few.
I'm just asking questions. That's all. I'm just asking questions. I have no answers. I'm just asking questions.
But it is funny though when you were going through the names that Newcastle did pop to my mind for not because of the Saudi money thing, but because of the joining the club for a player like Sander Sagosen, and how, if you're a top player and you're looking towards the money, and of course he has other reasons for it, but you're kind of waiting for other players to go there and build something first, like become a solid mid-level European team first, then you go over and you bring them to the next level. You just want to make sure that the team is going to be there before you commit to it.
Yeah, I think so. And another kind of part of the story, which I think is probably just as important to the club as Sagosen, is that they're trying to sign Christian Berge as their coach. He has a contract with the Norwegian Federation until 2025. So he's tied up there. He's pretty happy, I think. And, whether he comes in and starts this project, that would be the ideal situation. Having a coach like that take over and build a project with a long-term future is ideal. Whether he can do that while still coaching the Norwegian national team is a question. I think that was posed to him. I think the general opinion is that he shouldn't do it. But to be honest, why wouldn't he? If he has the Norwegian national team in club form, and then the Norwegian national team as well, that can probably help the whole country out.
Let's just say he doesn't, though. Who else could you see in potentially taking that type of job?
Thorir Hergiasen. Let's see him take on the men.
Oh, you never see that, though, do you? You rarely see coaches going from women's to men's, do you?
No, I mean, you've had a few, particularly in Denmark, with Jan Pitlik, I think, has done it, and also the most famous of all, the guy who won the Ulrik Vilbæk, who's now a politician. So he got the job done with the men, got the job done with the women, then he became a politician.
He's sorting out the country now.
Sorting out the country. I think he's in Viborg as a politician. I don't know how that's in my head. But anyway. But yeah, it is not so usual. But yeah, I mean, he's done it all with the Norwegian women's national team. Let him get his payday.
Who would you like to see Alex take over?
It would probably have to be a Scandinavian coach, because they're going for a Scandinavian team. So what about talking big, Nikolai Jakobsen, who, he's had a good run. He might be looking for a change of pace. 2023, there's a bit of time there.
Brings a 46-year-old Andy Schmid with him to work with Sander Sagosen.
What about a coach who's kind of maybe fallen to the wayside the last few years? Lubomir Varanjes, back from the ashes, his rise again to take a small team back to the top.
He's still the Slovenia coach, isn't he?
No, I know. But I'm talking in terms of club.
Yeah, that's not a bad shout as well. He was one of the names that popped up or flashed by my head a little bit as well.
But there's one thing to not underestimate here. he speaks Swedish, and why that is wildly different to Norwegian. They like to think that they understand each other, but it's
I think it's closer than Nikolai Jakobsen's Danish. Another name in there. I mean, Sävehof won't thank me for saying this, but Mikael Appelgren, who was the Elverum coach, now is the Sävehof coach, had a very good relationship with Christian Berge and has a good reputation in Norway. He's another one.
That's actually a great shout. Why not give it to kind of a rising star? Build a project from the start.
God bless the current Kolstad coach. He's turned into Steve Bruce overnight as well, no?
Who is the Steve Bruce of Kolstad?
To be honest, the name didn't even pop up when I was researching.
Oh no! Let's see here. Kolstad. Stian Gomo Nielsen. Sorry, Stian.
But I'm not really sure if he's going to stick around too long, because they have already made let's say minor investments in the team. They've picked up some of the good Norwegian players around the league, and they're currently sitting in 9th behind Halden Top Handball, where a friend of the pod plays, Josh Cron-Grace.
Not just a friend of the pod, but a teammate of ours, an Irishman.
Teammate of ours.
I thought you were going to mention that because I think Josh and Halden beat them already this season.
Exactly. Another, let's say, project to probably check in on, and that is Kielce. While not a new project starting up in handball, but it seems to be a bit of a, let's say, rising phoenix story from, an emotional point of view, where we spoke to Berta Servas in detail about this, but he's come out firing. He gave us all his negotiation tactics, and we've seen them in work, seen them like step by step on Twitter as well, building the hype continually. And he's announced 6 signings for the 2023 and 24 season. So a real regeneration of this squad. I think two big ones there in Stas Scuba and Remily that we kind of knew before. Concoud also coming from PSG. The last one to get signed was Jaganiak from Nexa. I'm a big fan of him. I think he has a bright future. He's only 23 years old, a real powerhouse, and showed what he can do in the European League, the first round of the European League, where he scored 9 goals, including a last-second winner against, was it Aix-en-Provence?
Yeah. Pauk.
Against Aix-en-Provence. So big star there. And to add to that, he has also, so Kielce have signed 2 potential future superstars of the handball world. One being an Egyptian, another Egyptian coming into Europe, which is great to see, Hassan Kada. He's still very young, needs time to develop in the Egyptian league where he is at the moment, but could be a star of the future. And the other one, which was probably pretty one of the funniest stories to come out of Servas's Twitter campaign, and that is Elliot Stenmalm, who is a young Swedish player who excelled in the, was it under 19 championship?
Top scorer.
Top scorer, absolutely dominant. Rasmus Boysen tweeted his stats out, and a reply to that tweet came from Berta Servas, who said, "Oh, very interesting." Rasmus Boysen then replied, "Kielce's new player?" ? And about 6 months later, he is Kielce's new player.
Not even, like 3 months later.
3 months later. So we know Bertus works quick, but he really snapped that up.
Yeah, what I really liked about that was how public he made it as well. It's like, he'll come back on the podcast in a couple of years and he'll talk about his latest negotiation skill, which he was developing while he talked to us a few weeks ago, which is publicly talking about it on Twitter and letting the handball world know that it's not a rumor. This is the guy I want. It's a real kind of old school, almost like 80s English football way of getting a player, just like showing up at their house and, talking to his mother and said, now get him to sign that contract.
Offering tea and biscuits. What positions does he play in that last one you mentioned?
Stelman. He's a left back, which adds another interesting caveat to all of this, which Rasmus tweeted about yesterday, is that when he joins in the summer of 2023, Kielce will have 10 right-handed backcourt players to choose from, as things currently are. So, which is
someone's getting the chop.
Someone's getting the chop. And Bertus replied, "Do you think that's too many?" Rasmus then replied, "Well, some of them can go out on loan," which is, I think, certainly the case when you look at some players and what Kielce have done. They've not been afraid to sign young players and then send them out on loan, like they have with Doruk Pelevan, who played with them for half a season and has been out on loan since then. So, yeah, definitely building for the future. And it's, it shows that they're doing their hard work now and just like, this is what we have, this is what we're going to build towards. And after they announced Stelmam also on Twitter, I like this tweet from what I believe is like a Płotsk journalist, Lukas Żoltowski, and he just tweeted a GIF from The Office where it just says, "I just wanted to stop." And Bertus replied, "It will stop now." So yeah,
oh god,
great stuff.
But Alex, who do you see getting the chop then in 2 years?
I think a few obvious ones there. So I think Kulesh is gone.
Yeah.
He's out of the running there. They've also Pachkovsky, who's out on loan at the moment. I don't think he'll come back, but
yeah, he's a left-hander though.
Yeah, but then they have Remily and
They don't need any more. But I'm just saying it doesn't cut down on the problem with 10 right-handers.
I think also potentially Pelevan, and maybe he'll go out on loan again. He's been good, but I don't think he's right there. But I think Kulesh is the big one. I think there'll be a lot of clubs lining up to sign him. He's, primed for that big contract in Meshkov Brest as they're kind of revamping their squad as well. But it's so interesting to see. You can clearly see the next two generations of this team, where we have basically right now, as Servas told us, that, Alex Sushbayev said, get me a team to win. So he brought in Remily and Scuba. That's enough to, get to the top right now. And then they said, while these guys are going to be the top of the top, we'll get the young guys in to develop, or at least, as those guys are ramping down, we get the young guys. So they have, with Stenmalm and Kada, they also have Håker Thrasterson, who is a 20-year-old Icelandic super talent. Unfortunately, got an ACL injury last year, but he's back. Hopefully he comes back to his full form. And I think another big, let's say, chance that Servas has taken is bringing over a 17-year-old Nigerian kid, Yusuf Farooq, who scored his first goal in the Champions League. It's exciting, giving him the opportunity to just learn for probably 4 years before he gets into the team.
First Nigerian to score a goal in the Champions League.
First Nigerian to score in Champions League. Pretty exciting. I don't think he was even in the squad that we played as the Irish team against Nigeria.
He would have been 15 in that famous draw between Ireland and Nigeria. Yeah, thankfully for us, he wasn't in the squad.
How many years will it be before an Irishman scores a goal in the Champions League?
I think Josh Grace had his chance. He was in a couple of squads for Aalborg, and I don't know if he got on the court. So, good question. One of us has to have a child, I think, first, and then. and get to work on that.
But according to the Kielce Wikipedia page here, Kulesh is already leaving, but it says destination unknown. So I think he's already be on the way out.
Yeah.
Also, just on that, I was looking at Reinek Leuven, and I'll mention that a little bit later, but on their Wikipedia page, when they said, leaving or arriving in the next couple of years, and with Andy Schmidt, the tag beside it was Destiny Unknown, which is a real fitting mark to how that is right now.
Yeah, Destiny Unknown. One more player potentially on the chopping block for Kielce. I wonder, Danny Dushabayev. Does he make the cut there?
That's a hard call, isn't it?
Yeah,
calling your son like that.
Oh yeah, that's a tough one. But I think with he's shown flashes of real potential, but with his injury history, I think if he wasn't the coach's son, he'd be very clearly on the chopping block. But maybe the kind of system they have in Kiel, so they'll find a nice place for him to develop and say, you can come back in a couple of years if you do well, and your dad will probably be gone by then. It's all in the plan.
He's off to Meshkov Brest. All right. Do we have any more of these?
There's a last one which I'll mention quickly, and that is Melsingen getting a new coach, and that being Robert Garcia Parondo, which I think is an incredible signing for Melsingen. Hopefully he can put in a system, a plan for that club, which, they should be better than they are. We saw how he, transformed Egypt, and that was a long-term plan. And hopefully they stick with him and he develops this club and we see Melsingen's potential come out. Well done, Melsingen. Maybe sacking your coach after a few games wasn't the wrong decision.
Well, they have the money to splash. We'll see if it works out for them. All right, so we before we go into our chat with Laura, we're going to do a little hit and miss of the season so far in the men's game. We've all chosen one team that we've been impressed by, one team that we have not been impressed by, and we're going to give our quick reasons for them and try and hammer that one out in 10 minutes or less. We'll see if we can do that. So we're going to start with Alex and the team that impressed you so far this season. Who's your hit?
My hit is Veszprem, because I wasn't expecting them to be at the level that they've been this season. They themselves, I don't think were expecting. With their change of coach, they didn't make a big change to the squad. They got rid of a few players like Tönnissen, Markusen and Borazan. And I think getting rid of Borazan may have been a big reason for how they turn around. But in their targets, in Momir Ilic's targets, the Champions League Final Four wasn't even there. They want to retain the Hungarian title, and for the formation of a team unit. And team unity was basically the real kind of point that Momir Ilic came in with, that we need to build a team, and what was before wasn't a team. And that was clear from the way they played. Completely individual, really hectic, but I think they've just accelerated that team unity and have looked like a proper team this season. They, of course, got that huge win against Barcelona. They have their fans back. I expect big things from them. And with Lauge Schmidt back in I wouldn't say full form, but as the captain of the team, they have, I think he's brought some sort of solidity or calmness to the team that is counteracted by Petr Nenadic, who is absolute mayhem. But when he's on,
he's scoring goals.
But he's scoring goals, so he's doing well as well. But they have a bit of calmness around that. So
good.
They're my team.
Brian, who's yours?
As I knew Alex was going to pick Veszprem, so I think mine would be Dynamo Bucuresti. And there were a lot of questions before the season even started. how Xavi Pascal was going to get on with the squad of players that he had. And I think even in terms of the signings that they've had, you see the power of the Pascal brand. People like Gerbindo signing for Vardar and then going, no, actually, wait a second. I'd rather go play for Xavi Pascal in the Romanian league. Obviously beat Kielce in their opening game. Let's just ignore the PSG game. And then pushed Porto all the way, only losing by 1, and gave Barcelona a decent enough game, only losing by 4 goals. So I think they'll be delighted with the start of their season. And with a game against Motor coming up, and Motor haven't been looking as good as they normally are, so they could fancy maybe picking up some more points there. Had you said at the start of the season, Bucharest are going to be bottom of the table, maybe no points, pull a Zagreb, you would have been like, yeah, probably. But they've picked up points and they're pushing teams. So I think for me, that's been very impressive.
I have to go for a team that are finally delivering, and I'm saying it on the 20th of October, which is far too early, but could this be Magdeburg's year? They've already won the Super Globe, which nobody can deny was not a very good achievement, beating Aalborg in the semi-final. And then, no two ways about it, they hammered Barca in the final. They absolutely smashed them with a solid performance all around. And top of the Bundesliga, 7 wins out of 7 so far. Omar Ingi Magnusson, what a star he has been. 43 goals, yes, a lot of them from penalties, but 28 assists from a right back who's also their top scorer, I think is super impressive. Michael Damgaard is finally in form again all of a sudden, and maybe a bolter for the Danish squad for the Euros next year. He was brilliant in their last victory. Mike Jensen, the goalkeeper who's come out of nowhere. He's only 26, Danish as well. He's joined from Ballingen and is actually outperforming Yannick Green so far. They already have 11 players to score 10 goals or more this season in the Bundesliga. And they haven't just beaten any teams. As well as beating Aalborg and Barca in the Bundesliga, they've beaten Rhein-Neckar Leuven, they've beaten Melsungen and Leipzig, 2 teams that usually cause Magdeburg problems at random points in the season. And, of course, most recently beating Flensburg. Big test for them, though, in the next month, because 3 of their 4 next games are away from home to Kiel, Göppingen and Berlin, the other 3 teams in the top 4 in the Bundesliga. That'll say a lot about their future.
Very nice. Very nice. I have one more comment to add to Magdeburg because I've also been extremely impressed. And they remind me of Bahrain. And stick with me here. Our discussion about the small ball handball and how Bahrain have, that's what Magdeburg have at the moment. They don't have any big shooters. Their top players are Damgaard, who is he's not too small, but he's a short back.
Not your classic left back.
Not your classic left back. Magnusson on the right back again. He's 1.86 m. They have Case Smits, who's also 1.86 m. Their whole backcourt is under 1.90 m. Which is rare to see, but they're playing this kind of dynamic breakthrough standing shot handball, which is absolutely beautiful at times. So very excited.
Who's the team that hasn't impressed you, Alex?
Let's stick with the Bundesliga, and that team is Rhein-Neckar Leuven. And it really annoys me how they've messed up their transition. They have the money, they have the players. They could have, they knew that Andy Schmidt wasn't going to be around forever. He's 38 now. He isn't the same player that he was. This season especially, he's having quite a poor season. They haven't, when Nikolai Jakobsen left, they didn't have a plan for transition from him or from Andy Schmidt. And they have Klaus Gartner in there at the moment, who, he's not doing a great job. They have Sebastian Hinze joining in from Berkshire next year as the coach, and I think that will be the start of the transition with a few of their kind of younger players, like getting Yuri Knorr in there. But they knew that this was going to happen, and they just absolutely messed it up. And right now they have 5 points from 6 games in the Bundesliga, with the kind of charge of a lot of teams at the top. I think it will take them a long while to even get back into the European League properly with the rate that they're going, and that's an absolute pity.
How about you, Brian?
I'm not going to say Flensburg.
Oh.
Flensburg. It wouldn't say Flensburg anyway, it'd say Flensburg. Flensburg hand of it, because that would be unfair with all the injuries to have. But I will say poor performance of the season, maybe the Flensburg strength and conditioning coach. I don't know what shoe, or whatever the shoe sponsor is for Flensburg. Need to sort that out. I don't know. There's maybe some, again, conspiracy theorists out there. If you look into it a little bit, what shoes are all these players wearing? Because how much bad luck can you have? There has to be something going on there. I was trying to think of an example. A few years ago, there was some team doing something in some, I can't remember what it was. I think it was a football team, and they were training on the AstroTurf with their studs on, and the whole team were getting ACL injuries, and they couldn't realize they were getting all these ACL injuries, and it was to do with something with their training. And I'm not saying that's what's happening in Flensburg, but how much bad luck can you have
for 2 seasons in a row?
2 seasons in a row, yeah. And they obviously extended Mike's contract there during the week as a sign of we're sticking with him, showing the fans that we know it's not his problem. But yeah, it's a bit of a mess for Flensburg at the moment, and it's actually quite painful to watch. It's not enjoyable at all. You feel like every game, even before a throw off, you're kind of like, and you can see it in the player's face. I mean, I can't remember what game it was, the last Champions League game. Their starting 7 was decent, and they just weren't playing like they weren't matching the quality that they had on the court, even for those opening minutes. I mean, whatever you talk about hitting the 40-minute mark and not having the squad to rotate in, but you just feel like the whole team just looks very deflated, and it's not the easiest time to be a Flensburg fan.
No. Also, when you consider that Kolstad are going to sign all of their players in the next 2 years.
But they've just been playing with 8 players for 2 years. That is just nonsense. There's also kind of some sort of handling of that needs. They've signed, their usual approach is getting a 40-year-old to come in for a couple of days to back up the squad. That also has to kind of fit into this. You have to prepare for injuries and the squad management, and it just doesn't seem that Flensburg have thought that through. Of course, they're extremely unlucky, but there's more to it. There's more than just bad luck to this.
That's true. And my team that I'm not impressed with this season, Meshkov Brest, I'm afraid to say, they're just not, like, for all the ambition and all the promise, they're not delivering so far this season. 4 losses out of 4 in the Champions League as of the time of recording. And I mean, when Baptiste Bonfont is your top dog, there's something wrong. You know?
That sentence alone is brilliant. Baptiste Bonfont was your top dog. That should be a t-shirt.
Nothing against him, but I mean, he's kind of like a squad player at French league level, and he's doing the business for them. The quality is still there somewhere, and the games they've lost at home to Szeged and Kiel, okay, that can happen. That's not a huge disaster, but a bit like with Magdeburg, the other way around, with the next 4 games being huge for them. For Meshkov Brest, the next 4 games after this week are Elverum and Zagreb, home and away. So that will tell us a lot about whether they're actually going to make it through or not. So, not impressed, but there's time for them to turn things around.
And there's a real risk there of that. I think they're also not handling a bit of a transition. They're losing Staskuba. He has been the heart and soul of the team, and potentially already he might have given up on the season at some sort of level. Of course, we can't assume that he's an amazing competitor, but he knows he has a new club to look forward to next year. They need to figure out how to move on from this team, and if they don't get it right, they can really mess it up and lose a big sponsor and implode. So I hope they get it right. They are a good team to have around.
Yep. So I think that's enough about the men. And we're going to go on to women's EHF Champions League chat. And we're going to bring in Laura Agena from Playmaker Women's Handball in to talk to us about that. Hello, Laura Agena, joining us from Argentina. One of our, now we can safely say, a regular guest on the podcast. And when you know that Laura is on, we're talking women's handball and specifically the Champions League this week. Laura, how are you?
Doing good here in Buenos Aires.
We're already 4 rounds into the women's competition. A lot to talk about. I'm wondering if we can start with the storyline or the team or the player that has surprised you most this season in a good or bad way.
I would say Ferencváros surprised me so far, but I think it's a tricky one. It's always surprising at the beginning, and you always kind of expect them to go far in the competition, and in the end, it's like we say something in Argentina, it's like siempre le falta cinco para el peso, which means something like they're almost there, but they quite don't make it. So at this point, I'm wondering how far they will make it. But I think they did very good so far with a very good Emily Bolk, and the goalkeepers are also good. Itana Grbić being a very good playmaker. I think this must be like her third or second year playing as a playmaker after having been a wing for most of her career, or at least in senior. So I think it's surprising, but it's good to see her perform that way.
And Brian, you were at FTC's game against Esbjerg on the weekend for Match of the Week. What did you think of them? FTC, of course, a team that often have had strong opinions about over the years.
Yeah, and I think maybe I'm slowly starting to change my mind, having seen what I've seen at the weekend. I think there seems to be a little bit more, anyway. I will be a bit careful now. I don't want to give it all away at this early in the season, but I think there seems to be a little bit more maturity about this team. And I don't mean maturity in terms of age, but I think in terms of kind of decisions on the court, even though right at the end, they almost blew it again. But I think when you look at their other games over the season, they seem to be hitting a stride that I haven't seen them hit before. And I think players like Laura mentioned, Emily Bulk, really do fit in really well with the team. And it was very interesting for me to see Henny Reistad on one side and Emily Bulk on the other side. I mean, Bulk isn't as trigger happy as Henny, but quite similar players to certain degrees. And I've never seen them, I don't think I remember ever seeing them playing on the same court at the same time. But it was an interesting back and forth they're having. Obviously, Henny was a lot more trigger happy and a lot more successful in front of goal, but it was an intriguing game overall with the lead changing hands about 6 times in total. So it was really, really over and back. Very entertaining stuff, and an absolutely packed arena in Erd, not in Budapest. So all the players had to travel down from Budapest to Erd. So it was an interesting game, not to say the least. And I'm pretty excited actually, to be honest, about FTC. I think as I said, I think they've kind of hit a new stride.
And when it comes to the young players in the squad as well, it's like the team, whether it's FTC or also Hungary, it's a team that or a group of players that we've talked about a long time about being in transition and waiting for the breakthrough. Whereas this year, finally, I think we saw that breakthrough in what they managed to achieve by qualifying for the Olympics, and also their late run in the group phase in the Olympics as well. And that maybe is transferring over to what they're managing to do so far this season, at least. And they're, managed to just about hold on to their unbeaten record against a Team Esbjerg team, which once again seem to only have about 7 players on the court. Seems no matter what they do and who they sign, they're a bit like Flensburg, but in the women's side of the top flight handball, they were down to, I think, 12 players. That seems to be a bit of a worry for them in the long run, particularly with how many games they have coming up in the group phase and hoping to transfer that into the knockout rounds as well. But what do you think about Esbjerg and the new look backcourt they have there, Laura?
I think it's a very powerful one with both of the tallest backs in the Champions League, and adding now Henny Reistad, which is, of course, the MVP of the last Final Four. But I can't really say too much because I haven't seen most of their games. But I think it's, as you mentioned, the fact that they are short of players and still managed to grasp that tie last week. And then also I think they lost in the first match and they won the other two, right? And then the last round they tied. Yeah, it's a matter of seeing, as you said, how far they will make it if they still have problems with a shortage of players in the squad.
Well, what did you make of them when you saw them live there, Brian? Was the lack of depth in the squad something that was noticeable?
Well, just in terms of the amount of substitutions, you could really see it. But I think I did worry in certain parts. I thought it was maybe slipping away from them. But then especially at the start of the second half, they looked to kind of have ironed out a lot of those issues and seemed to take control of the game. And then looked to me like FTC were in trouble. But so I was pretty impressed with. I mean, look, you put Henny Raistad in any single team in the Champions League, and she's gonna keep on shooting and keep on scoring. I can't remember who said it to me. I think you were there with me, Chris. Someone was saying to me she's a great player, but maybe she shoots a little bit too much. But I'm not sure about that when you look at the amount of goals she scores. But she's great to watch, and she could pass a little bit more to the line sometimes when she's getting dragged out of. But it's an exciting time for Esbjerg, but I would be a little bit concerned when you get to the latter stages of the season. Are they going to hit some sort of, as you said, Chris, some sort of Flensburg territory where they kind of maybe run out a bit of steam?
We've gone through second and third place at the moment in Group A, so we may as well stick with Group A for the moment. And I think it's a super interesting group. The top six all separated by just 2 points, which is, even though it's very early days, still emerging to be a very interesting group to look at. And Rostov Don on top alongside FTC on 6 points at the moment, and seem to be managing okay without Anna Vekareva so far. That was something I was really interested to see at the start of this season. Obviously, with Anna feeling that she needed to take some time out of the sport, and got a lot of public support from Per Johansson as well, the coach of Rostov, which I think was a very big move. But the rest of the squad seem to be managing okay. Have you seen much of them so far this season?
Yes, and I think that they already had a very good team, and they added both Amorim and Nedvij. And then, of course, they had to bring another right back because of Vekireva's absence. But I think, they just continue to do what they've been doing. But I think this time, and because they knew they were not going to have Vekireva on the team, I think it's more noticeable the kind of team that they are. It's not only about her, because I think maybe at the end of the last season, you could see how much they depended on her, and how much their level depended on how she was feeling on the court, especially maybe on the quarterfinals against Vipers. When they lost, they had to play the 2 games in the same weekend. And you could see that maybe if she was a bit low, the team was also a bit low. I don't know if maybe not now, knowing that she's not with them now, they have to all step up a little bit. But I think everyone is just at a very good level, and you could still see Grasadi shining. She's to me, she's one of the top 2 players right now, and also adding Amorim, who's not only very important in defense, but also adding many goals this season as well.
There's no particular news on when Anna Vekareva is thinking about coming back, right? It's kind of like an open-ended break.
Yeah, it sounds like that, yes.
Okay.
Unlike Daria Dmitrieva, who's apparently said she will come back at the beginning of next year.
Yeah, it's interesting. Who knows if maybe we'll see them bounce back just before the quarterfinals or something like that, or the last 16, so they can ease into it.
The decision of Per Johansson to give her that, I mean, what do you think? Do you think it's a bit of a risky kind of allowance that once you kind of open the floodgates that...
I think it's one of those where you have to take it on a case-by-case basis. And in Anna Vekareva's case, she is, once in a generation type of player, and you just got to make it work for her. And she's given a lot of herself, as pretty much all of these top-level players have, particularly with the success Rostov and in particular Russia have had in the last few years. She's been the focus of all of that, and when things go wrong for them, she's the one they all rely on. So she's been carrying a lot of burden, and so at this stage in her career, and she's still fairly young, there's a lot more probably they can get out of her in the long run, and a lot more she can get out of herself as a handball player in the long run if she's allowed to get this time. So as long as Per Johannesson is around to reap the rewards of that in the future, then I think it's a really smart idea. And I think just on a kind of basic human level, it was a wise thing and a correct thing for him to do.
I don't even think it's not even a matter of who she is. It's just a person asking for some time to take a rest and to a well-deserved one, because it could have been anyone, but being her, and she's been in the national team since very early ages. She was MVP of the Olympic Games at 21, which is not something normal. When we spoke with her at the Playmaker podcast, she said that until this day, it was quite difficult for her to understand what happened there. She was very nervous, and she was not so conscious about what happened there, and she didn't quite enjoy the Olympic Games. And it's a coming from someone who was MVP, it sounds like it's a bit weird for you not to be able to enjoy everything and to fully understand what you're doing there at the biggest stage of them all. And I think maybe now after these Olympic Games, I was there in Tokyo, I was working at the organizing committee, and I could see the Russian team after the final, and they were devastated. And I think this timeout is something that, and I think she mentioned it before, it was something that she requested even a year before. But she was asked to stay, she was asked to wait for the Olympic Games, and she did so, and maybe she needed that break at that time. So I'm wondering now if she had that break before, if she would be still playing now. I don't know. But I don't think it's about that right now. Right now it's about her resting and figuring out what she wants to do.
I think it's very easy for us from the outside watching professional athletes in any sport. It's very easy for us to kind of, look, you've got the best job in the world, And when we play sport, we train 3 or 4 times a week, and we can barely do that sometimes. And never mind training once or twice a day, plus traveling all over the world to different tournaments. And especially then when you're one of the really, really top players, when you're being picked and you're playing more minutes than everybody else, and you're going to every single event, and you're playing every Final Four and going to, as you said, the Olympics, etc. So the toll on those type of athletes is something we probably are going to have to kind of come to terms with, I think, as we become more advanced with sports psychology and all that kind of stuff. So it's something we might see more in the future. And I think probably we should talk about it more, because otherwise you'll end up in situations where you have players like Kim Ekdal-Duria, who was kind of burnt out, left, kind of came back, and then didn't really get going again, and then left the sport completely. So maybe we do need some sort of, sports sabbatical for our very top players to protect them from the tolls of professional sport.
If you think about the upcoming World Championship and the Women's World Championship and the number of stars we will not see, Bella Gulden already retired last season. Kristina Nyauers is just taking a break from the national team. Lekic, Svic are also not being there. Vyakireva, Dmitrieva. There are many players who will miss the tournament because they needed a break. I think that says something about the calendar and something that has been talked about for the last couple of years.
Are you saying this is Argentina's big chance to win the title?
Wow, there's a big chance we go through the main round for the first time ever. Yeah. It only takes winning one game, so I have hope in that.
We were talking already a lot about Group A, and that's somehow without mentioning CSM Bucuresti, Brest Britannia, and one of the surprise packages, Borussia Dortmund. So, maybe we can fire through them pretty quickly. Any teams in particular with their performances stand out to you?
Yeah, Borussia, definitely. And I think right now Alina Grisels is one of the top scorers of the competition. So yeah, and I think she's been doing very good. I like how they managed to play very long games, if you know what I mean. Like they still within the game and within the 60 minutes. It's not like they only lost one time, and it was last weekend. But it was a game in which they were also very close in the score as well. So I think they're doing very good this season, and we'll see how far they will make it. But I think what's positive about them is that they've managed to win the games and to play all 60 games at a very high level. All 60 minutes at a very high level.
Dortmund, before the start of the season, there were people kind of thinking, they're not going to be any use this season. But I think I remember the first time I saw Alina Geisels play, and I think she scored, it was last season, I think she scored 12 in one game. I mean, she's a really, really impressive player, and a player who you used to actually see using the arm swing, bringing back some old school handball. She's using the arm swing, something you don't see that often anymore. But she seems to be getting better at almost with every game I see her playing. So she's a very, very exciting talent for Germany coming up. And yeah, I think it's great to see the Dortmund sticking it to the doubters, because I think people were kind of doubting the squad they had, but they have some really good young players like the Ten Holte, the Dutch quick keeper and goal. She had a decent game the last game too. So I think probably Dortmund was definitely the team that stuck out for me the most.
I think the doubt has been about German clubs in particular over the last few years, because they just haven't been able to offer much. And you look at a German team and you're like, they'll be mid-table, then they get knocked out in the first round. Or in the old format is like, they'll get to the main round, maybe they'll squeeze into the quarterfinal. And so having a team like that who seem to be a squad capable of throwing their weight around is pretty interesting. And I remember I was watching that game against CSM Bucuresti last week, which they lost by 3 in the end, but it was a much closer game than that. 25-22, I think the final score doesn't really reflect how close that was. And how tricky CSM Bucuresti are finding this season. Them and Brest. I mean, it's still early days, but it's proving to be a wide open group. And you feel bad for Podravka and Budućnost, who I don't really think will be able to break into the top 6, looking at how it is at the moment. But besides that, a fascinating race to the knockout rounds. Over in Group B, we have a couple of teams charging ahead already, with Dürr and Metz with perfect records in terms of winning so far. Metz having played one fewer game. They haven't played against CSK yet. Really happy to see Metz kind of in flying form again, because last season it looked like the squad wasn't the right balance for them, but it seems to have matured a little bit.
Yes, and this weekend when they beat Krim on the very last seconds, you can see, I think, that, as you've said, the team is like more stylish, or at least doing better than the last season. And it was also not a very nice way to finish last season when they lost the quarterfinal against Brest with such big margin. This season, it's true that I don't know what would have happened if they would have played that first game of the season against CSK, because I don't know who would have won. But so far, 3 victories, and they look good.
The game against Krim was a really great game, and an incredible ending with Louise Borgart scoring that final second goal. I mean, talk about a clutch moment. That was great. Absolute heartbreak for Krim. And you think Krim, with all the signings that they've brought in, with like Lekic, Sujic, Stanko, who else have they signed? Pignot.
Reinhardt, Alison Pignot,
Yeah. So I think overall they're going to be very disappointed with the start of their season. They lost 2 games by 1 goal, so they came pretty close. And they gave Gür a decent game, but we're still not quite there yet. But I think they will get going eventually. But I think they'll be maybe licking their wounds a little bit at the moment with some of the losses, because they were within touching distance to get wins, especially the game against Metz. They were so close. So it's been a bit of a rough start to their season, but I feel like they will get into a gear now soon, and they'll be a tough opponent. Particularly losing their opening game away to Save a Hoff, which is one that I'm pretty sure when they rocked up thinking, we've got this. This is a nice, handy start to the season for us. And then they come up against Yamina Roberts, who is just continuing to get better and better as after she's returned to the sport in the last couple of seasons. Or it's only been just over a year, right, that she gave birth. It feels like longer at this stage because she's just continually impressing. But she's really leading that Save a Hoff team.
Yeah, how about the Vipers squad? You know, they're coming to this as reigning champions. It's been a mixed bag for them with 2 wins and 2 losses and a very different look and feel to the team. How do you think that squad is coming together?
Well, I think it takes a bit of time when you no longer have a player like Henry Reistad, even though I think everyone mentioned this, but of course, having Nerea Pen and Bella Guldin in the team now also, I mean, it's not like they're just any signing. They're top class players. But I think it also might take time because none of them have played in the Norwegian league before or in that team before. So I think it's just a matter of time. And if you see like the first game, I think it was against Gjør, it was maybe, I don't know which team had more new players in the squad, if Gjør or of Vipers, because they both have many signings this season. It's just a matter of time for them to settle and get used to playing with each other. I think they're leading in the Norwegian league as well. So, but I think we cannot compare both competitions, of course. I think the good news, at least, is that Nordamork is in very good shape, and I think slowly but surely they will settle in. And I don't think that the matches that they lost were not matches that they were not supposed to lose. I would say not logical, but you could have expected them to lose those games. So I don't think it's something that they have to worry about.
Yeah, you can go to Gjør and you can go to Metz and lose, and it's not the end of the world for a team like that. And yeah, I mean they came from, where was it, fifth place in the group last season, all the way to win the title. And so I think probably just teams in Group A will be looking at them saying, "No, please don't finish in the bottom half. You're wasting our good effort here at the moment." But yeah, it's still a long way to go in there. I want to talk a little bit about Odense as well. As well, last season they were just up and down throughout the whole thing. You never knew which team was going to show up when you saw Odense play. This season seemed to be a little bit more settled, and with Dione House here at right back as well, who's had a fantastic start to the season, 30 goals for her. They look like a team that are capable of mixing it at this level as well.
Yes, and also with I think Mia Hoylund in very good shape now, and also they're getting back Louisa Bing. Last season, I think was it the playoffs or the quarterfinals? No, it's a playoffs they played against Vipers, right?
Yeah.
That was also a very tight series, so it could have gone either way. And this season, maybe Young Haushio comes from Nukowin, right? She's doing very good, and I think she's getting more confidence. I think playing her first season in Champions League, doesn't look very nervous, and she's still very young. I think she's only 21. I think they can also go through to the playoffs this season, but I don't know which place they will finish in the group. But as you said before, it's very early now. It's only four rounds so far. We'll see how far they can go. But I think the team looks good, and the backcourt is very solid. And also goalkeepers are stepping up. Tesvester is now in Chesime, but I think it might be the year for Althea Reinhardt to take ownership of that goal.
She had the save of the season so far, I think, anyway. Her double save against Gjør, I think, was probably the highlight of all the saves I've seen so far.
Yeah, she's a great goalkeeper, and she's still incredibly young as well. So particularly for a goalkeeper, so a lot of good stuff to come from Reinhardt.
Because you were talking about House here, there, you know, and I was thinking it's incredible the conveyor belt of Dutch talent that Holland seem to always be able to produce. And I mean, she's got 30 goals so far. I mean, it's really bonkers how well she's playing. And she's a really, really dangerous player. So good at 1-against-1 and just so dynamic in the backcourt. So she's going to be a super talent for the Dutch national team very soon, I'd imagine.
And there's a bunch of them over in CSM as well. I think like half of the Borussia Dortmund team is young Dutch players. So it is impressive what they continue to do. Any other teams there you want to talk about in Group B, Laura?
I would say I was impressed by Krim, but not in a very good way. I was really expecting much more from them, mainly because of the signing that they got this year. Because last season they also did good. They were also very close to going through to the quarterfinals, and they were really close. And this season, I thought, well, if they made it this far and playing so good with the signings that they had this season, it would be interesting to see if they will be fighting for the top of the group. But I think it was a bit disappointing. I don't know. It's I'm not sure how. Well, they will definitely need time to settle as a team, but I was expecting more, even though it's early days, as you said.
Do you see them being under any pressure from Sävehof or Kastamonu, perhaps, for that 6th place?
No, I don't think so. Or at least it shouldn't be that way. I think if the team has time to start working together a little bit better, I don't think they should be in trouble.
Okay. So basically what we're saying then is Podravka and Budućnost will be in trouble in Group A, and Kastamonu and Sävehof in Group B. You don't see any other teams potentially dropping out of the top 6?
Well, now that you mentioned Sävehof, no, I don't know.
There's only room for 6.
I mean, because it's a tricky one. They already beat Cream and playing good. I think. I also think that Sävehof they haven't. I mean, they lost some of the games by a big margin, but they also lost by 1 against SK. Maybe they could snatch some other points on the way. We'll have to see. Maybe they can get that 6th place, but we'll have to see.
Yeah. It's it's a bit early to be making those kind of predictions, but I'm going to keep asking anyway. I'm going to ask you for a couple more predictions before we let you go for now, and it's about the top 2 in each of the groups, because as we know, the top 2 in both Group A and Group B go automatically to the quarterfinals. And we'll start with Group B, seeing as we've been talking about that. Do you see any other teams besides Djur and Metz? It feels like Djur have the top 2 in their pockets, but it could be a bit more open when it comes to 2nd place.
Yeah, as you mentioned, I think Djur will very likely take the 1st place. For the 2nd place, I'm not sure. Metz are very good right now. They're missing a game, which they could potentially win or lose as well. I can't really. I don't know. I don't know about the 2nd one, and I don't like predictions.
Nobody ever does. Do you have a standout 2nd team there, Brian, in Group B?
I'd say I think what Laura said earlier, probably I was feeling about the Viper squad that maybe need a little bit more time, where maybe Metz are a little bit more settled. So I think I'd probably stick to what it is at the moment with Djur and Metz in the top 2. I feel like it might be a little bit early for Vipers to get everyone settled, and with the few injuries that Vipers have also. So I think maybe just in terms of consistency, Metz might squeeze it, but I think it'll be pretty close overall. Don't be much between those top 3 teams.
And a Group A, you have 6 teams there who probably secretly fancy themselves as a top 2 team, or could break into that top 2. But which 2 do you think is going to make it, Laura?
I think Rostov could stay at top of Group A. And then for the 2nd place, I see FTC going through. I don't know if I see them going through directly, because of what we always talk about with FTC, is that there is that team that looks like they will, okay, this might be their season, and then they don't make it. I would like to have hope in them and say they will finish 2nd in the group. If they can manage to be consistent through the group round, then they could take that 2nd place.
How about you, Brian?
I think here's a bit of a hot take for you. I think it's going to be FTC to finish top of the group and Rostov to come 2nd. And I think we might even swap places this weekend when Borussia Dortmund draw with Rostov and FTC move ahead. So there you go. So this will be a nice soundbite if this all works out next week. But if it doesn't, you'll never hear of it again. That's the beauty of podcasting.
That's how it works, yeah.
What do you think for your top 2, Chris? Did you say?
From Group A, I would have to go with Rostov and I think Esbjerg. If Esbjerg can get Meditramborg fit and have a relatively full team of 13, 14 players, which for them would be huge, then they look like they have the team with Henny Reistad to lead them into the top 2.
Henny Reistad and 6 players, but we'll see. We'll see when the season goes on if they've enough legs. FTC have that nice deep squad, you know.
That's true. I just love to see your newfound love for FTC, Brian. I think it all changed in December last year when you interviewed the Hungarian players at the Euro, that you found a newfound respect for them. So thank you so much, Laura, and we'll speak to you hopefully just before and maybe during the World Championship in Spain. Hope to see you there as well, if all things go to plan.
I'll be there too.
And of course, everyone can follow Laura and her work with Nagore on Playmaker Women's Handball. It's playmakerwh.com. Thank you so much, Laura.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much to Laura for that great chat, and also to Alex and Brian, who I'm not going to let talk anymore because we've been talking for too long. Thank you. But a really nice podcast, and thanks everyone for listening. We'll be back again very shortly with another one. Goodbye.